A large group of people from Ocean Design went to the Destiny Pavilion Hotel. No one took Mark's offer seriously, especially David. He thought Mark was just joking and putting on an act in front of everyone. How could he really treat them? This was the Destiny Pavilion, and not everyone could afford the prices there, especially a pauper like Mark. Mark, on the other hand, wanted to treat everyone to a meal from the bottom of his heart. After all, he was now the CEO of Ocean Design. As a leader, it was only natural for him to treat his employees. Because they had a large party, they asked for the biggest private room available. This room was considered the largest and best at the Destiny Pavilion. It was decorated very well. There were 2 huge antique vases on the left side of the room. They added an elegant aura. A huge round table dominated the space, with places for more than 20 people. After everyone was seated, Mark said, "Today is my treat, everyone. Feel free to order what you want. Your happiness is my top priority." When they heard this, everyone was stunned for a moment. One of the young men said, "This Mark isn't serious, is he? He doesn't really want to treat everyone to a meal, does he?" Another person said, "I thought he was just joking, but it looks like he really does." David snorted, thinking, how can he treat everyone to a meal? Mark is a loser. With the money his wife gives him, he can't afford to treat anyone. Is he used to acting pretentious? David coughed lightly and said to Mark, "Mark, everyone appreciates your good intentions, but there's no need to treat us. Everyone knows that you don't have much money. Even if you want to treat us, we can't accept." The other employees also quickly agreed. One said, "No, we can't let you treat us on your first day. We were just going along with the joke. Your salary is the lowest in the entire company. If you were to treat us to this meal, it would probably cost you a year's salary." "That's right," another employee said. Another employee nodded. "Mr. Fife invited us to this meal first. He's very generous and also very well paid. He can afford it. Isn't that right, Mr. Fife?" David smiled proudly. He waved his hand and said, "Yes, I get well paid, but in the end, we're all on the same team. I like to treat everyone to a meal out of friendship." When David said this, Mark stood up and said very seriously, "I was recommended for this job by Mr. Fife, and now I have a job at Ocean Design. It's fate, and it's great. So I'll treat you all to a meal today. There's no need for Mr. Fife to spend money." Upon hearing this, David's face turned pale. "Damn it, what's wrong? I've given you a way out." "So why don't you take it? Are you really so desperate to be the cool kid?" "Mark, are you telling the truth? Don't tell me you really want to treat everyone to a meal," an employee teased. Mark said in all seriousness, "If I say I want to treat everyone to a meal, I mean it. It's just a meal, it's nothing. Don't make it a bigger deal than it is." After saying that, Mark said, "All right, I think it's about time. Everyone, let's order." Everyone got a little silly. Hey, this Mark seemed to really want to treat everyone to a meal. Look at how serious he was. Well, they might as well enjoy themselves. David was so angry that he almost spat. "Damn it, he purposely stole my limelight. You don't want me to treat you, but you do want the upper hand. All right, Mark, since you like to act cool and you like to be the leader, I'll give you this chance, and then we'll see how you feel. I'll ask everyone to order the most expensive dishes available. Then we'll see what you can afford." Thinking of this, David suppressed his anger and said with a smile, "Looks like Mark is sincerely inviting everyone to a meal. In that case, we can't refuse. Let's start ordering now." After saying that, David picked up his menu. Paying attention only to the prices and not to the dishes themselves, he ordered the most expensive items he saw. An employee whispered, "Mr. Fife, you're ordering such expensive dishes. Can Mark manage the cost?" David deliberately raised his voice and said, "Please don't look down on my relative. Although Mark is just a gopher, his wife is the CEO of a big company. She gives him a decent allowance every month. So, since he insists on doing this, we should let him. Order the most expensive dishes, or it will be disrespectful to Mark." Everyone was shocked when they heard that. It can't be, can it? Mark's wife is the CEO of a big company? Why would she let him come out to work here in a menial position? That's right. If his wife gives him a generous allowance every month, why did he come to our company to work as a gopher? If he really wanted a job, surely he would go to his wife's company. The group of employees began to talk about it among themselves. David said, "Although Mark is just a kept husband, he's also a man. All men have their own dignity. You can't always let your wife support you. That's why Mark begged me to find a job for him in our company. Mark's wife is indeed the CEO of a company. She's rich and can easily arrange a relaxing position for Mark with just a few words. But wouldn't that be too embarrassing? That's why Mark came to our company to work." Everyone came to a realization. That's right, even if he's married into a rich family, he can't always live off his wife. Otherwise, even she would look down on him. An employee sighed. "I really don't see it. Mark looks so tall and strong, hardworking and capable. I didn't expect him to be kept by his wife." Another one said, "You can't say that. It's not easy to earn money now. Men are generally under a lot of pressure. Mark took a shortcut. By marrying into a rich family, he has food, a roof over his head, and money to spend. It's great." When he heard the discussions of the crowd, David was very happy. He wanted to inadvertently expose Mark's identity as a useless son-in-law so that everyone would laugh at him. He also wanted to let everyone know that even if Mark really wanted to treat them, he would be spending his wife's money, not his own. But facing all of this, Mark remained calm and collected. The corners of his mouth wore a calm smile, as if he'd seen through everything. When David saw this indifferent expression, he felt that Mark was pretending to be cool. "Pretending again? Let's see how long you can pretend for." David thought fiercely, because everyone ordered the most expensive dishes. David roughly calculated the huge cost of this table of expensive meals, wines, and desserts. He wanted to see Mark's face when he saw the bill later. Could he still pretend to be cool then? David still didn't believe that Mark could really foot the bill of this enormous dinner. When it came, Mark would have to beg David for assistance, because he was the only one among the people present who could help him. David nodded to himself. Mark, you wimp. When you beg me later, I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget." Rich food was served to each person at the table. The most obvious dish was the huge pot of soup placed in the middle of the round table. This was the Destiny Pavilion's signature soup, which was said to be one of the world's top 10 most expensive soups. The ingredients included lobsters, mussels, mushrooms, sea cucumbers, scallops, chicken, ham, and other ingredients, and a secret ingredient that the chef refused to disclose. Because there were a lot of people present, no one got much more than a mouthful. But the little they tasted made everyone sigh and nod with admiration. It was extremely delicious. It was just that the amount was too small, so everyone could only taste it once. It was really not satisfying. Everyone was amazed and regretful. Even David was a little jealous. In the past, when he was pretending to be cool, he'd brought other people to the Destiny Pavilion to eat. But he'd never dared to order this incredibly expensive soup, and he never thought that Mark would be basking in glory today. This made him feel very indignant. As for Mark, after tasting the soup, he couldn't help but praise it. He'd long heard that this particular soup was one of the best soups in the country, and it was. It was truly delicious. He was thinking of the day when he would bring his wife to taste it as well. Wow, this soup is really delicious, but the amount is too small. Each person can only taste a little bit. What a pity. Someone shook his head and commented. Mark also felt that it was a pity that such a delicious soup could only be tasted once per person. So he cleared his throat and said very seriously, "This soup is so delicious that it's a shame we should have so little. How about this? Each person can have one serving to themselves." Hearing this, everyone almost fell off their chairs in surprise. Even David was stunned. His eyes widened, and he looked at Mark in disbelief. "What the hell is this? What did you just say? One for each person?" Seeing everyone looking at him with surprised eyes, Mark nodded and said, "Yes, one serving per person. This way, everyone should be able to eat to their heart's content." "Damn, are you for real? This is the signature soup of one of the top restaurants in the country, not a corn dog from the local truck stop. This stuff is crazy expensive, and you want one serving per person? That's ridiculous. Your wife will have to mortgage her house to pay for it. You must be joking. How can each person get one serving of such an expensive thing? Besides, I don't think there are that many portions of soup in the restaurant." David's face darkened. "Mark, you're acting too pretentiously." Mark shook his head helplessly. "I'm telling the truth. Why won't you believe it?" Then Mark said to the wait person at the door, "Please, come in." A beautiful wait person walked up and asked respectfully, "What do you need, sir?" "Do you have more of the signature soup? We would each like a serving," Mark said straightforwardly. The wait person was shocked when she heard that. "Sir, we do have the signature soup, but are you sure you want that many servings? It's quite expensive." "Of course, I know this is the Destiny Pavilion's signature soup, and I know the price. Do I need you to tell me what I already know?" Mark impatiently interrupted the wait person. He really wanted to give everyone a serving of the soup. After all, this was a rare opportunity to prove to everyone that he could afford this meal. He didn't expect that no one would believe him. Even the wait person was looking at him suspiciously. Do they really think that I, Mark, can't afford it? Or do they really think that I'm a useless son-in-law who only knows how to live off women? Mark thought. "All right, enough with the nonsense. Since you have it, I want one serving for each person," Mark ordered. The wait person was stunned for a moment. Then carefully she said, "Sir, I think it is necessary to tell you the price of this soup." "I already know the price. Do you think I can't afford it?" Mark asked. No, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean that. All right, I'll arrange it right away. Please wait a moment." The wait person left in fear and trepidation. At first, she thought that the guest was posturing, but it seemed that the guest did actually know the price of it and was serious about giving each person a serving. Today, this wait person was in charge of this private room. The customer was spending a lot and her tips were high. So, since the customer was rich and willing to pay, she naturally wouldn't stop him. Everyone looked at Mark with their mouths agape. They couldn't believe that this was true. It couldn't be, right? Mark was just a new worker in their company. How could he be so generous to treat everyone to a meal of Destiny Pavilion's signature soup? David's face turned slightly green. He kept cursing under his breath. Mark, the stupid fool, was really used to acting pretentious. Was he for real? About 10 minutes later, several servers arrived at the table with trays full of the signature soup and placed a bowl in front of everyone. Only then did everyone believe that it was true. Looking at the expensive soup in front of them, no one dared to touch their spoons. "Mark, stop pretending. If you really overdo it, it will not be easy to end the situation." David frowned and said, "It is not too late to stop now. Hurry up and ask the wait person to take the soup away. If worst comes to worst, you'll have to pay labor and food fees, but that's much better than not being able to pay the enormous cost of the soup itself." David was a little angry. Mark didn't take his words seriously at all. He said disapprovingly, "I said I would treat everyone to the signature soup. Why should I return it? Come, everyone, pick up your spoons and eat while it's hot," Mark said. He picked up his spoon and lowered his head to eat. "You?" David was so angry that his face turned red, but he could do nothing about it. He felt that Mark had stolen all his limelight today. He could only mutter under his breath, "Okay, I'll let you pretend for now. Let's see how long you can keep it up." When the meal was about to end, Mark said, "Although the food in this restaurant is delicious, it is not enough. Why don't we give everyone some dessert?" Mark looked at the plate of truffles on the table and said, "I think this plate of truffles is pretty good, so I might as well get one for each person." This sentence shocked everyone again. The plate of the truffles on the table did not contain ordinary truffles. These were white truffles. They were made from the finest Italian truffles, as well as the most expensive grape jelly in the world, from the finest Mediterranean vineyards, and then they were lightly decorated with flakes of gold leaf, making them the most expensive truffles in the world. Each serving cost several $1,000s. Everyone thought that this dessert was a little too expensive. Mark said he would order, so he immediately called a wait person over and asked her to immediately bring each of his guests a serving of truffles. Soon, more than 20 plates of truffles arrived at the table. At this time, everyone regarded Mark differently. An employee said, "This Mark is really generous. He just gave us the signature soup. Now he wants us to eat white truffles. These are things that only billionaires can afford. We really benefited from Mark today." "Yes," said another employee. "I thought Mark was just joking. I didn't expect him to be serious. It seems that he doesn't lack money at all." Someone said to David, "Mr. Fife, your relative is not what you think. He's so generous that I don't think he's just a son-in-law. He's more like a secret rich man." "That's right, I think Mark is a rich man. It is impressive that a son-in-law can be so wealthy," another staff member from Ocean Design said. "Even when Mr. Fife invites us to dinner, we can't have such expensive food. Mark is the one who is really generous. He just keeps a low profile." After that moment, no one said that Mark was a useless son-in-law. Instead, they all looked at him with respect. Because he was rich, he could easily give every one of them the most expensive dishes in the world. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Even David couldn't do it. David was so angry that his face turned purple. Today, Mark had not only stolen his limelight, but also stepped on him. David was a dignified department manager, but he was actually stepped on by a lowly gopher. He was extremely unhappy. He listened to the discussions of the crowd and became even more indignant. He placed his spoon on the table. He stood up abruptly and said to Mark, "Mark, come outside with me. I've something to say to you." After saying that, David turned around and walked to the door of the private room. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Mark revealed a faint smile on his face. Then, without saying anything, he stood up and followed David to the door of the room. After reaching the door of the private room, David's face darkened. He suppressed his anger and said to Mark, "You are the son-in-law of the family. Why are you pretending? Each person had a bowl of signature soup and a plate of white truffles. That meal cost thousands. Mark, every cent you get is from Nicole. It's all her hard-earned money. What right do you have to use her hard-earned money to act cool?" Mark chuckled and said, "David, I think you have misunderstood. I didn't show off. I just sincerely wanted to treat everyone to a meal. When I treat everyone to a meal, every cent I spend is my own money. It has nothing to do with my wife." David folded his arms. The last time Mark treated Old Red green, He made millions in one go. He used $400 million to invest in his wife's company, which left $100 million to play with. So what if the meal cost a few thousand, even tens of thousands? To him, it was a drop in the ocean. After saying these words, Mark didn't bother with David anymore. He turned around and went back into the private room. This made David so angry that multiple thoughts of retribution flashed through his mind. But he couldn't do anything about it. Mark was rich, and he was willing to spend money to treat everyone to a meal. So what could David do? Of course, David still felt that Mark was talking big. After all, to him, Mark was a useless loser. Even if he had money, how much could he have? It was just a few tens of thousands of pocket money from Nicole. David followed Mark back into the room. When he saw the blue and white porcelain vases on either side of the door, he suddenly had a plan in his mind. While he pretended that he didn't notice the vases, he gently reached out with a foot and kicked one. The blue and white vase had a narrow base and was not sturdy to begin with. It wobbled, then it toppled to the ground with a crash, smashing into many pieces. Mark had just walked past the vase when he heard the movement behind him. He suddenly turned his head, but David's eyes instantly widened. He pointed at Mark and shouted, "Mark, are you crazy? You dare to smash such an expensive vase?" Everyone at the table was stunned. This was the Destiny Pavilion, and this private room was the biggest and most expensive. The two blue and white vases inside must also be very expensive, and now one of them was broken. Initially, no one knew what was going on, but after David shouted, everyone turned their eyes to Mark. "Mark, why are you walking so carelessly? I can't believe you smashed the vase. This is the Destiny Pavilion. Every item here is of the highest quality and is worth a lot of money," David once again shouted with an exaggerated tone. At first, Mark was a little confused, but he quickly understood what was going on. He had just walked past the vase, but he hadn't touched it at all. But just as he walked past it, the vase broke into pieces. David was right behind him, so it was obvious that David was trying to frame him. Seeing Mark standing there in a daze, David once again shouted with an extremely shocked tone, "Heavens, you actually broke an expensive antique! How will you pay for it? I estimate that it is worth hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions." Everyone was shocked. They all stood up from the dining table, all talking together. "What's going on? Why was Mark so careless? He actually shattered this expensive vase." "Damn, antiques like that cost the earth. I'm sure I couldn't afford it." "What should we do now? This meal had already cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now a vase is broken? If we don't come up with a few million today, I don't think we will be able to leave the Destiny Pavilion." Everyone was discussing among themselves. Mark had a calm expression on his face. He looked at the pieces of the broken vase and said, "I didn't break it." Everyone was stunned once again. It wasn't him who broke it? David shouted at the top of his voice, "Mark, I saw you walk past this vase with my own eyes. You accidentally bumped into it and it fell to the ground and broke. You have to bear the responsibility when you do something wrong. Now is not the time to shirk your duty. How are you going to compensate the Destiny Pavilion Hotel?" When David shouted, the wait person outside the door heard the noise and came in. When she saw the broken vase, she immediately screamed, "Oh my God, this blue and white porcelain vase was bought by our boss at a high price yesterday. This is the most luxurious private room in our Destiny Pavilion, and the vases showcase its quality. But you guys, why did you break it?" David said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. We didn't break this vase on purpose. How much do you think we should pay for it? We'll fully compensate your boss." David then gave Mark a look. "Mark, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and apologize to them." Mark said, "I told you, I didn't break this vase." "You?" David said in fury. The wait person waved her hand and said, "Don't ask me how much you should pay. I can't make the decision. I have to ask my manager." After saying that, the wait person left in fear and trepidation, but soon returned with the manager of the Destiny Pavilion. The manager was a young man in his 30s. He wore a pair of glasses and a suit. The wait person pointed at the broken vase on the floor and said to him, "Look, the blue and white porcelain vase that the boss bought yesterday was broken by a guest in this room." The manager looked at the broken vase and his face immediately revealed a shocked and somewhat angry expression. "You, what were you doing? Such an expensive vase. How could you be so careless as to break it? This pair of vases was bought by our boss at a high price from an auction. They're very expensive." David was very happy when he heard this, but on the surface he pretended to be afraid and asked, "This pair of vases was bought by your boss at a high price? Then how much do we have to pay?" "At least a few $100,000, the manager said. "But we still have to ask our boss for the exact amount." The manager said to the wait person, "Go and ask Julius if he can come here. He's the boss of Destiny Pavilion. This matter has to be decided by him." The wait person nodded and left. Mark frowned and asked, "Julius? Are you talking about Julius Darren?" The manager said, "That's right, the Destiny Pavilion belongs to Julius, but I'm afraid you don't have the right to call Julius by his first name." David was overjoyed when he heard that the Destiny Pavilion belonged to Julius Darren. Julius, that was the underground king of California, a man who had the backing of the big and powerful Green family. Great! Today, Mark had actually provoked Julius. He wouldn't be able to buy his way out of this mess. When Mark heard that it was really Julius, a smile appeared on his face. So this was Julius's territory. That was good. Very good. When Julius walked into the room with a cigarette in his mouth, everyone shivered. This was Julius, the famous underground king of California. People without similar power and connections feared him, for good reason. Even David's heart couldn't help but tremble. He'd long heard of Julius's great name. He'd also heard of Julius's ruthlessness, but he didn't expect to offend Julius today. After entering the private room, Julius asked casually, "Who shattered my precious vase and caused trouble in my territory? This blind idiot will pay for it." The hotel manager raised his hand and pointed at Mark and said, "Julius, it was this person who broke your vase." Julius looked up at Mark and was stunned. He blinked his eyes hard. "Mr. Johnson?" David was afraid that Julius would get angry at him, so he quickly went up and said with a smile, "Julius, one of my employees accidentally broke your blue and white porcelain vase. He really didn't do it on purpose. Please forgive him." As David spoke, he looked at Mark, who was standing to one side. When he found that Mark still had a calm look on his face, anger overtook David. "Mark, you idiot! What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and apologize to Julius!" David shouted angrily. Mark smiled and looked at Julius meaningfully. "Apologize? Do you really need me to apologize?" Upon hearing this, David felt like his lungs were going to explode from fury. Damn it, this idiot had gotten himself into trouble and caused a huge disaster, but he still said such arrogant words. He was courting death. In his anger, David lifted his leg to kick Mark. "What are you still standing there for, you idiot? Hurry up and apologize to Julius!" But before David's foot touched Mark, there was a sudden bang, and David felt pain in his side. But by the time he realized what was happening, he'd already been sent flying. The others were shocked, but they quickly realized what was going on. Just as David was about to kick Mark, Julius, who was standing next to him, unexpectedly kicked David in the side. "Damn you! How dare you yell at Mr. Johnson?" Julius said. After a long time, David got up from the ground with the help of his colleagues. He held a hand to his side and looked at Julius nervously. "Julius, you're—" Julius stepped forward and grabbed David's neck. "You are a worthless, small fly. Who gave you such nerve? You dare to shout at Mr. Johnson and try to kick him." David was confused. He said sadly, "No, Julius, it wasn't me who broke your blue and white porcelain vase. It was Mark. You kicked the wrong person." "I kicked you." Julius slapped David's face hard, then threw him to the ground. After that, Julius turned around and looked at Mark. "Mr. Johnson, I'm so glad to see you here. Why didn't you call me in advance? Your presence really brings honor to my place." Julius's face was full of smiles. Anyone could recognize the fawning look. It was a sharp contrast to the way he looked when he kicked David just now. David and the others were stunned. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that the big boss of California would actually try to curry favor with a useless loser like Mark. Mark smiled faintly. "Julius, I've troubled you. I heard from the wait person that this vase was bought at a high price, but now it is broken into pieces." Before Mark could finish speaking, Julius hurriedly said, "It's no problem. It's just an old vase. If it's broken, it's broken. No big deal." Hearing this, everyone was even more confused. Even the manager of the hotel was confused. 2 days ago, Julius had personally sent these 2 blue and white porcelain vases to the hotel. He'd bought them for a high price at an auction. Then the manager had placed them in the private room of the hotel to make the decor look impressive and rich. He had asked to take care of them carefully and not allow any harm to befall them. But now, Julius actually said that breaking one of them wasn't a big deal. The Destiny Pavilion hotel manager couldn't take it any longer. He took a step forward and said to Julius, "Julius, you said that these blue and white porcelain vases were priceless. Now that one has been broken, this guy should pay for it." Before the manager could finish his words, Julius gave him a fierce glare. Then he deliberately raised his voice and said, "It's just one blue and white porcelain vase. Even if Mr. Johnson breaks both of them, so what? We are honored that he broke our vase." Julius pointed at the other vase and said to Mark, "Mr. Johnson, you did well with that vase. If you'd like, break the other one as well. In fact, please, do whatever makes you happy." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. What? Breaking one blue and white porcelain vase was already going to cost a fortune, and now Julius was asking Mark to break the other one as well. David and the others had looks of disbelief on their faces. Not only did Julius not ask Mark to compensate him for breaking one vase, but he even asked Mark to break the other one as well. How badly did someone need to suck up to Mark to say such a thing? What made them even more puzzled was why Julius, California's biggest big shot, would want to suck up to Mark. Who did Mark think he was? He was just a useless son-in-law. But they had no idea that Julius was almost beaten to death by Mark at the Pacific Coast karaoke. So Julius was under no illusions about Mark's strength. More importantly, Mark had a good relationship with old Red Green, the backer of Julius. Red Green treated Mr. Johnson as a distinguished guest. Even the eldest daughter of the Green family, Marcy, respectfully called Mark Mr. Johnson. Last time, Marcy had sternly warned Julius that if he offended Mark, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. So no matter how powerful Julius was, he wouldn't offend Mark. Even if he had all the guts in the world, he wouldn't dare to do so. Mark said, "Julius, this vase is priceless. Are you really not going to let me pay you back?" "No way. How would I dare to ask you to pay me back? I just said that it is my honor to have you shatter the thing." Mark frowned and thought for a few seconds. Then he said, "It's because I was the one who broke this blue and white porcelain vase that you don't want me to pay you. But what if someone else broke it?" Hearing this, Julius was stunned. "Someone else? Mr. Johnson, do you mean this vase wasn't broken by you?" Mark said, "Of course not. From beginning to end, have I ever said that it was broken by me?" Julius was stunned again, and then he shook his head. "That's right. You never said that you broke the vase." "I didn't break it. There was someone else who broke it," Mark said, and he glanced at David. David was scared out of his wits, because he knew very well that it was him, not Mark, who was responsible for the breakage. David had broken the vase and framed Mark for the damage. It was one thing if Mark made him lose face, but he never thought that Mark would expose this matter. How could David not be afraid? If Julius found out that it was he who broke the vase and then framed Mark, his life would be in danger. Julius wanted to please Mark. Even if he believed that Mark broke the vase, he wouldn't let him pay for it. But David was different. In Julius's eyes, he was nothing. Thinking of this, David's body started trembling. His heart was filled with fear. "What?" Julius said in response to Mark's claim. "Mr. Johnson, are you saying that you didn't break the vase? Good. But who was so bold as to tell me that you did? Wasn't this framing you?" Julius turned his gaze to the manager, who was standing to one side. "Didn't you say that this vase was broken by Mr. Johnson?" Julius asked. The manager trembled in fear. Initially, he didn't take Mark seriously. But when he saw his boss, Julius, fawning over the guy, it showed that he was an extraordinary individual. "Julius, I didn't say that. Yes, the wait person told me that it was this Mark fellow who broke the blue and white porcelain vase." The manager put the blame on the wait person. The wait person was so scared that she shivered. Julius looked at her sharply and said, "When did you see Mr. Johnson break the vase?" The wait person said with a trembling voice, "I didn't see it. When I came in, the vase was broken. Oh, right, it was him. He told me that Mr. Johnson broke the vase." She raised her hand and pointed at David. Julius immediately turned his sharp eyes to David. David trembled again. He stammered, "I saw it with my own eyes. It was Mark. When he came in, he bumped into the blue and white porcelain vase, so it fell down and shattered." Mark slowly looked at David, then smiled and asked, "Hey, is that so? Mr. Fife, are you sure you saw me break the vase?" I saw it," David stuttered. Mark said, "Mr. Fife, you have to be careful with your words. If you lie to your conscience, disaster will come out of your mouth." Hearing this, David's heart skipped a beat. Julius shouted at David, "If you dare lie about who broke the vase, I'll break your head. Now tell me, did you really see, with your own eyes, Mr. Johnson break this vase?" David's legs felt weak, and he actually kneeled in front of Julius. "Julius, please, I was wrong. This vase wasn't broken by Mark. It was me. It was me who couldn't stand Mark being in the limelight, so I purposely kicked the vase. It fell down and broke, and then I framed Mark." Julius couldn't believe that David was admitting to framing Mark. It made him very angry. "How dare you frame Mr. Johnson? Someone break one of his hands," Julius said. Hearing this, David turned pale, and a look of despair appeared on his face. Mark said, "Forget it. We are all from the same company. For my sake, let him go." Julius smiled and said, "Mr. Johnson, you're truly magnanimous. Since you've asked me, I'll spare this guy for your sake. I won't kill him, but I might have to hurt him a little." Julius looked at David and said, "My blue and white porcelain vase was priceless. It was shattered by you, and I can't just let that go." "I'll compensate you. Just please don't cripple my hand," David said hastily. "All right. I spent 10 million to buy this pair of vases. Since you broke one, you can give me 5 million, Julius said. 5 million? David was dumbfounded. His annual salary was only 5 million. Breaking the vase just cost him his annual salary. Mark said, 5 million? That's nothing to Mr. Fife. His annual salary is several million, isn't it, Mr. Fife? Yes. David felt like he'd just swallowed a fly. Seeing him like this, Julius coldly shouted, "What? You don't want to compensate me? You don't think you owe me big?" No, I'm willing. I'm willing to pay 5 million, David stammered. Mark said, "Mr. Fife, actually I can understand why you broke the vase and then framed me. You just couldn't stand me treating everyone to an expensive meal, could you? This meal should have been bought by you. After all, you have the highest salary in this group, so you should be the one in the limelight the most, but I stole the limelight from you." Mark sighed theatrically. "Now I feel really embarrassed. How about this? I won't steal your limelight." Mark raised his voice. "Everyone, please thank Mr. Fife for this wonderful meal he has provided us." Hearing this, David almost vomited. Mark had just ordered the Destiny Pavilion Hotel's signature soup and a plate of white truffles for each of them. These two items were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now Mark had thrown the responsibility for paying on David with just a few words. He, David, really had wanted to treat everyone to a meal. He really wanted to make a name for himself. But the prerequisite was that he could afford to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for one meal. For a manager with a salary of a few $1,000,000 per year, it was too extravagant. But in the current situation, he couldn't back down. He didn't dare to say no. Julius observed Mark's expression and knew that Mark was deliberately playing tricks on this Fife guy. So he waved to the wait person and said, "Come and calculate how much this meal cost." The wait person quickly calculated that the meal cost a total of $860,500. Julius laughed and said, "Although my Destiny Pavilion Hotel is a high-end hotel, this is the first time I've met a guest who paid more than $800,000 for one meal. This meal of yours is really extravagant. I'll give you a discount for Mr. Johnson's sake. If you don't want the change, I'll take just $800,000 from you." Just like that, David was on the hook for $5.8 million for both a crazy expensive vase and a crazy expensive meal. This evening was too depressing for him. Not only did he lose most of his money, but he also lost most of his self-respect. Now, the 20 or so employees under him looked at him differently. Some of the employees were even whispering about how Mr. Fife was such a pathetic person. In order to steal the limelight, he even broke a priceless vase to frame Mark. Weren't Mr. Fife and Mark related? He kept saying that Mark was a useless son-in-law, a laborer, but then he insisted on competing with Mark for the limelight. In the end, he lost money and face. It was really pathetic. David's face was ashen, and his stomach rolled with anger. Mark, on the other hand, still had a very calm expression. But the 20 or so employees in the company also looked at Mark differently. Some employees even went up and said, "Mark, you were really awesome today. Even the boss of Destiny Pavilion, Julius, shook your hand and greeted you with a smile." "Yes, Mark, who are you? Why is Julius so afraid of you? Mr. Fife said that you're just a son-in-law with no money or skills. Why don't I believe him?" "Mark is really low-key. He usually doesn't reveal his true colors, but when it comes to critical moments, he amazes the world with a single brilliant feat." "That's right, Mark is really awesome." Hearing the discussions of the crowd, David became even angrier and clenched his fists. The next morning, David came to the company early. Mark also arrived early. Mark first poured a glass of water for each staff member, then began to do some chores one by one. At this moment, David walked out of his office and shouted at Mark, "Mark, come here!" All the staff looked over at them. Everyone could feel Mr. Fife's anger. "This is bad," someone said. "Mr. Fife has gone mad. The meal yesterday was paid for by Mr. Fife, so he is upset. His heart was on fire." "That's right. It seems like Mark is going to suffer for it. How do you think Mr. Fife will deal with him? He won't fire Mark, will he?" another employee asked. Hearing David's voice, Mark was not surprised. He put down the work in his hands and walked to David. In a voice that was neither servile nor overbearing, he said, "Yes, Mr. Fife, what can I do for you?" David looked at Mark fiercely and said, "Mark, you're fired." As soon as he said that, the employees on the 4th floor looked at each other, startled, and a buzz of conversation began. Mark still had a very calm look on his face. "Hey, I'm fired. Why?" Mark said. "No reason in particular. I have the final say here. I'll fire you if I say so." David snorted coldly. Of course, he wouldn't admit it, but the firing was because Mark had stolen his limelight during the meal yesterday. That would make him appear narrow-minded. Initially, he wanted to arrange a job for Mark so that he could humiliate and ridicule him anytime and anywhere. But he changed his mind. Mark had made him lose face yesterday, and he didn't want to set eyes on him again. Seeing that Mark wasn't saying anything, David raised his voice and said, "What are you still standing there for? Did you not hear what I said? Or did you not understand what I said? I don't mind repeating it, Mark. You've been fired. Hurry up and get the hell out of here." The entire 4th floor immediately became dead silent. The atmosphere became extremely tense. All the employees looked at Mark with sympathy, but no one dared to plead for his job. Mr. Fife was only a small department manager in the company, but in the design department, He was always asserting his dominance. If anyone dared to plead for Mark now, Mr. Fife would make things difficult for them down the road. The employees discussed it among themselves. What a pity. Mark just came to work yesterday and he was fired today. That's right. Actually, Mark is a good person, but he doesn't know how to do things. He also doesn't know how to suck up to people. Why did he offend Mr. Fife on his first day here? Now Mr. Fife doesn't even care about his relative's self-respect. He just fired him. Mark looked at David coldly. After a while, he suddenly smiled. This made David angry. Smile? At this time, this good-for-nothing could still laugh? What are you laughing at? Do you think I'm joking? It doesn't matter if you don't believe me. I just said that I have the final say here, David said. Mark didn't say anything. Instead, he turned around and sat down on a chair beside him. He even crossed his legs. When David saw his expression, he became even angrier. Wretched fool, are you deaf? I said you were fired. Why aren't you packing up your things? If you don't get the hell out of here, I'll call security. When that happens, don't blame me for being merciless as a relative. Mark's face suddenly turned cold. He slowly turned his eyes to David. He stared into David's eyes and said, word by word, David, you are fired. Hearing Mark's words, everyone was stunned. David was even more confused. He frowned and looked at Mark in disbelief. Useless trash, what did you say? What? You didn't hear what I said? Or you don't understand what I said? I don't mind repeating it for you. David, you're fired, Mark said. After a moment, David raised his head and laughed. Loser, are you sick in the head? I'm the department manager of the entire 4th floor, and I'm firing you. Who do you think you are? Stop talking nonsense and get the hell out of here. Mark slammed a hand down on the table and stood up. He said to David, David, for the 3rd time, you're fired. After saying that, Mark didn't explain anymore. He picked up the phone on the table and dialed a number. He said to the person on the other end of the line, Miss Brown, this is Mark. Come down to the 4th floor, please. Everyone was stunned again. This guy actually called Mary Brown directly. Everyone in the company knew that Mary Brown was the CEO's secretary. Below 1 person, above 10,000. What was going on? Mark was just a new worker hired by the company, and he came in through the back door. What right did he have to call Miss Brown? After Mary received Mark's call, she rushed to the design department on the 4th floor as fast as she could. When she arrived, she found that the atmosphere on the entire floor was extremely tense. Mary quickly walked to Mark's side and stood waiting. She politely and cautiously asked, Sir, did something happen? What can I do for you? Why is the CEO waiting at this manager's office? Hearing Mary's words, everyone was dumbfounded. What? CEO? Mary actually called Mark the CEO? That couldn't be right, could it? Did they mishear? Mark didn't even look at Mary. He pointed at David and said, Miss Brown, I want to fire Mr. Fife here. Please ask the finance department to settle up with him immediately. Ask him to pack his things and get out of here. Hearing this, Mary was stunned for a moment, but she immediately realized that this small department manager must have offended the new president of Ocean Design. Mary didn't question Mark's order. She nodded and said, Yes, sir, consider it done. After saying that, Mary took out her company phone and dialed the finance department's number. She gave a few simple instructions and asked them to pay what David was owed immediately. David was stunned until Mary finished the call. Only then did he realize what had happened. He hurriedly walked to Mary's side and said, Mary, what's going on? How did Mark become the president of our company? He's clearly a new worker. He's clearly a useless son-in-law. Mary interrupted him and said snappily, Shut up. A few days ago, I told you that our company is going to have a new CEO. I told you to keep your eyes open because the CEO would come one day soon. I didn't expect you to offend him as soon as he got here. No, you're no longer the manager, Mr. Fife. That's just the way it is. Then Mary raised her voice and said to the employees present, Actually, President Johnson was appointed yesterday, but he wanted to keep a low profile, and he asked us not to hold a welcome event. But then Mr. Fife treated the president as someone who was going to apply for a job, and used his authority to get him a position as a gopher here in the design department. After having a job arranged for him, Mr. Johnson could only continue to keep a low profile. After doing his job, he also took the opportunity to make a private tour of the company. I didn't expect that anyone would be so blind as to actually treat the president as menial labor. Everyone suddenly clued in. It turned out that the newly appointed president was Mark. He had really hidden it well. All the employees stood up and shouted, "President Johnson! President Johnson!" Mark waved his hand and made them all sit down. Then he turned his eyes to the stunned David and said, "David, you are the husband of my wife's cousin. I didn't want to do anything to you, but you kept showing off in front of me and in front of my family. This is really annoying. Aren't you just a manager with an annual salary of $5 million? Didn't you just buy an Audi and a Toyota Prado? Do you think this is very impressive? I don't." Mark shook his head and continued. "You didn't hesitate to buy a fake car to fool your father-in-law in order to show off. You also let your father-in-law fool my father-in-law. Your posturing is really a mess. Do you think everyone else is a fool? You pretended to arrange work for me, but in fact, you only asked me to do the job of a gopher. You just wanted to humiliate me. But there's one thing I want to say to you. Never look down on people. Due to your vanity, your act of climbing up and trampling on others, and your act of showing off for no reason, you made our company look bad. So you were fired." Mark dusted his hands together. "All right, I've finished speaking. You can leave now. As your employer, I don't want to see you in the building again. And as a relative, I don't much want to see you again. But you are the husband of my wife's cousin. So if you come to my house to visit, I'll welcome you with open arms. But if you dare to act cool in front of me again, then don't blame me for forcing you to reveal your true form. Take care of yourself." After saying these words, Mark walked out of the design department on the 4th floor without looking back. Nicole had just gotten off work and returned home when Tia hurriedly went up to greet her. She impatiently asked,
"Well, Nicole, today's date with Sean was good, right? He must really like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stayed out so late."
Tia looked at the time. It was already past 11 o'clock at night.
"I thought you wouldn't come home tonight. That would be even better. But maybe you need to get to know each other again first. Then, in the future, things will take their natural course. Ha!"
Nicole was a little tired. She took off her coat and hung it in the closet as she said, "Mom, what nonsense are you talking?" Tia said,
"What nonsense am I talking? Didn't you go on a date with Sean?"
"What do you mean by going on a date? We were talking about work," Nicole said. Tia said,
"Talking about work? Haha, do you think your mother is a fool? It's the middle of the night. A lonely man, a couple talking about work together. Oh, my good daughter, don't try to hide it from your mother. I know that Sean likes you. He's the son of one of the top families in the state. He's tall, rich, and handsome. And he came to LA in pursuit of you and your charms. Ha!"
"Mom, how do you know this?" Nicole was stunned. Sean had opened a branch of beauty makeup in LA in order to chase Nicole, but he hadn't advertised the fact. How did her mother know about it?
"Not only do I know Sean came to LA for you, but I also know that the two of you were already in love when you were in school. It's just that you weren't together for some reason. So many years have passed, but Sean couldn't stop thinking about you. Obviously, he's truly in love with you. So darling, don't hesitate anymore. A woman's youth is very short. You have a rare opportunity to be with a good man like Sean. Hurry up and divorce Mark and then marry Sean."
Tia nodded her head decisively. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Nicole asked. "I can't divorce Mark. Besides, Sean and I only have a work-related relationship. It's not what you think."
"That's enough. Stop pretending in front of your mother. I've already talked to Sean. I asked him what his intentions were. He told me straight out that he came here because of you. He loves you and wants to marry you,"
Tia stated. Nicole's eyes widened. You went to find Sean?"
"Yes."
Tia blinked and answered without hiding anything. "No, why did you go looking for him?" Nicole asked. Tia sighed.
"What else could I do? Aren't you as worried about your marriage as I am? When I found out that Sean was interested in you, I immediately looked for him. You know that your mother doesn't like to drag things out. I asked him directly, 'Do you want to marry Nicole?' He immediately said that his biggest wish in life is to marry you."
"Oh no, how could you do such a thing? Who told you to look for him? Who told you to say those things to him? That wasn't your place. I'm already married, yet you're asking another man if he's willing to marry me? That's so wrong." Nicole anxiously stamped her foot.
"So what if I did? Don't tell me you really plan to spend the rest of your life with that useless Mark. You'll have to leave him sooner or later. Now that you have finally met a good man like Sean, it's time to make a decision."
Tia suddenly clapped her hands and said,
"Nicole, don't hesitate anymore. Listen to your mother. Tomorrow you will go and begin divorce proceedings."
I don't want a divorce right now, Nicole said. Tia looked startled.
What? Then what do you want? Don't tell me you actually want that good-for-nothing to drag you down for the rest of your life. Don't test Sean's patience, okay? Nicole, this might be your only chance to change your fate. You have to seize it.
Nicole folded her arms and looked stubborn. No, don't say any more. I said that I don't want a divorce right now. Besides, even if I do divorce Mark at some point, I might not marry Sean. This has nothing to do with him.
Why does it have nothing to do with him?
Tia suddenly became anxious.
Anyway, I don't care. You must divorce Mark tomorrow.
At this moment, Timothy walked out of the bedroom. I don't agree, Timothy said. Nicole, you will not divorce Mark. Timothy's voice was resolute and decisive and made the room fall into a deep silence. Tia was furious. She raised her hand and pointed at Timothy and scolded.
Damn it, old man! Are you crazy? What right do you have to disagree with me? If you hadn't lost your mind 5 years ago and married your daughter to that good-for-nothing, she wouldn't be in the mess she's in now. You almost ruined your daughter's life. Now she finally met a good man. Do you want to continue ruining her life?
Usually, Timothy was gentle and kind, but at this moment, his face revealed an indescribable determination and even a trace of coldness. He stared at Tia, then turned his eyes to his daughter and said, word by word, I'll say it again, Nicole. I will not allow you to divorce Mark. Hearing this, Nicole's heart turned cold. An unspeakable grievance instantly rushed through her. 5 years ago, she could have married whoever she wanted, but with just a word from her father, she had no choice but to marry Mark. She would always remember the determination on her father's face 5 years ago. At the time, most of the family didn't want to have Mark as their son-in-law because Mark was a useless and ugly person. He was not worthy of her at all. But she didn't know what kind of bad influence her father had fallen into, and she wanted to be a good daughter, so she took Mark as her husband and the son-in-law of the Midler family. Nicole's marriage was a big deal, and her lifelong happiness was ruined by her father's decision. She had resisted and felt wronged, but it was all to no avail. After all, Timothy was her father. She couldn't change her father's decision, so she had no choice but to live with Mark for the past 5 years. Although she was kind and had developed feelings for Mark over the years, and she couldn't bear to divorce him so abruptly, it didn't mean that she wanted to be tied to Mark for the rest of her life. She, Nicole, was a living person. She had her own needs and desires, and the right to pursue her own happiness. Now, her first love, Sean, had reappeared. Sean was gentle and refined. No matter what aspect you considered, he was 100 times better than Mark in every way. Even though Nicole couldn't bear to abandon Mark, her reluctance was constantly wavering. Sometimes, she even thought that she might as well just divorce him now, because she would have to divorce him sooner or later. After getting a divorce, she might agree to Sean's request and marry him. But now, her father had stated firmly that he didn't agree to her divorcing Mark, meaning that he would never allow their separation. But what right did her father have to make such decisions for her? Why did Nicole's happiness have to end up in Mark's hands? Why did her father get to decide her future? That wasn't fair. It wasn't right. So Nicole, who had always been very obedient, suddenly thought of rebelling. Nicole walked to her father's side and said, Father, I don't understand why you suddenly forced Mark and me to marry 5 years ago. I also don't understand why you won't let Mark and me divorce 5 years on. Do you really want to tie me to that loser for the rest of my life? Is my happiness that worthless in your eyes? Nicole's tears flowed out as she vented 5 years of hurt and grievances. Tia stomped her foot and said,
Yes, you damn old man. Your brain must have fallen numb. You're not taking your daughter's happiness seriously. You're throwing her under the bus.
Timothy said to Tia, What do you know? I won't let my daughter and Mark divorce because I care deeply about her happiness for the rest of her life.
Ha! You're making it sound so dignified. That useless Mark can't compare to Sean in any way.
Tia was so angry that she stomped her foot again.
You forced your daughter to marry Mark. Can you show me which part of her is happy? No, you can't, because you're ruining her lifelong happiness.
After Tia said this, Timothy was a little angry. He looked at his daughter and said, Nicole, whether you believe it or not, I do care. I wouldn't let you marry Jack, and I'm not letting you marry Sean for your own good. because in this world, only Mark can give you true happiness. That's why I'll never agree to you divorcing him." Nicole felt even more wronged. She wiped her tears and said, "Dad, this means that you're determined. Do you want to tie me to that good-for-nothing for the rest of my life?" "All right. Then today I also have something to tell you. Even without Jack, even without Sean, if I don't feel happy, I'll divorce Mark. I will have the final say in my own future." After saying this, Nicole turned around and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Seeing his daughter crying, Timothy didn't know how he felt, but he didn't change his decision. He said, "Oh, Nicole, sooner or later you will understand your father's painstaking efforts. Sooner or later, you will realize that in this world, the only person who can give you happiness is Mark. He's not the useless person you speak of. He has already started to change. It's just that you haven't realized it yet." At this moment, the door opened and Kelly came in. Kelly had just walked into the living room when she realized that the atmosphere was not quite right. She saw her father sitting on the sofa with a sad face, while her mother kept pacing back and forth in front of him, cursing from time to time. Kelly asked, "Dad? Mom? It's so late. Why aren't you asleep yet? What happened?" Tia saw that it was her second daughter and stopped. She said snappily,
Why aren't you at the hostel at this hour? Why did you come home?
Kelly said, "I came to find my brother-in-law." Tia was stunned.
What did you say? Your brother-in-law?
"Yes, Mark, my brother-in-law," Kelly said. Tia didn't react for a moment because her second daughter was the same as her. She hated Mark very much and had never called him brother-in-law. Every time, she would call him a loser. So when her second daughter said that she wanted to find her brother-in-law, Tia was really not ready for it.
It's already so late. Why are you looking for that loser?
Tia asked. "There's something important." Kelly looked toward the bedroom. "Where is he? Is he already asleep?"
That good-for-nothing didn't come home at all. It's already so late, and he still isn't here. I wonder where he's been fooling around. His behavior's getting more and more outrageous. If he doesn't come back tonight, maybe he'll never come back. It would be for the best if he just died outside,"
Tia said. Kelly's eyes widened. "What? It's already this late, and Mark hasn't returned yet? Where could he be?" Tia smirked.
Who knows? Who cares?
After Tia replied to Kelly so snidely about Mark, she suddenly remembered that her second daughter's stomach had become bigger. This matter had been worrying her, but she'd temporarily forgotten about it in her concern for Nicole. Now, however, she grabbed Kelly's arm.
All right, wretched girl, do you have the nerve to come back here? Why is your belly getting bigger? Tell me the truth now.
Kelly felt annoyed when this matter was brought up. If it was before, she would definitely be so ashamed that she wouldn't be able to show her face. But now that this matter had been resolved by Mark, she said righteously, "What nonsense are you talking about? Whose stomach has become bigger? My stomach is just fine." Kelly directly denied the situation.
What do you mean? I clearly saw your belly getting bigger,
Tia said as she looked at her daughter. Then she discovered that her daughter's stomach had returned to its original state. She blinked her eyes hard. She couldn't believe what was in front of her.
What's going on?
Tia wondered to herself.
I clearly saw that Kelly's stomach had grown bigger, and she admitted it herself. Why is it that now?
Tia couldn't figure it out, and Kelly didn't want to say anything to her. She ignored her mother's questions and walked toward her elder sister's bedroom. "I'll go and ask Nicole when Mark will be back. He should have answered his phone no matter what. I'm worried about him." Tia pulled her back and said,
Come back here. Your sister is already asleep. Don't disturb her. I've already told you that useless Mark is not here. Why are you looking for him?
At this moment, the door opened and Mark walked in. The reason why Mark returned so late was that he'd gone to the Los Angeles River alone. He went to absorb the spiritual energy because ever since he consumed the recovery infusion, his speed of absorption had increased, and the process of enhancement was also taking longer. That was why he'd unknowingly stayed out until nearly midnight. In addition, he also went to find Ken and the other hooligans who Jack hired to teach Mark a lesson. Later on, they were bribed by Mark to deal with Jack. From then on, they believed that Mark was a rich and powerful person, and they insisted on following him. Mark asked Ken to investigate Jack, mainly to find out where Jack got the poison that he'd used to poison Timothy and put him in a coma. The most important thing was that the poison was exactly the same as the one Red Green had been poisoned with. Mark suspected that the person who poisoned Red and the person who poisoned his father-in-law might be the same individual. Mark promised Marcy that he would investigate this matter, which was the reason he hired Ken and the others. They had more contact with people and had more channels than Mark did. They would be better able to find the information than he would. Also, even if the identities of these hooligans were exposed, there would be no connection to Marcy. In addition, after he had crippled Jack in a fit of anger, Mark originally thought that Jack would try to get revenge. But after a few days, there was no movement from Jack's side. This seemed to be a bit unusual. Seeing Mark come in, Tia immediately shouted,
"So you still know how to come back, do you? You wimp, why don't you take a look at what time it is? Tell me honestly, where were you and who are you with?"
But before Mark could reply, Tia added,
My daughter is going to divorce you very soon, so what does it matter where you were or who you were fooling around with? Wretch, listen up. Tomorrow, go and start divorce proceedings with my daughter, then pack your things and get lost. Don't ever appear in our house again.
Mark was already used to Tia's attitude, so he just gave her a cold look and prepared to go to the bedroom.
Mark, wait. I have something to talk to you about.
Kelly went forward and tugged Mark's sleeve. Mark said, "What is it?"
Kelly lowered her voice and said, "It is not convenient to talk here. Let's talk outside."
After saying that, she pulled Mark out of the room. Tia scolded,
"Hey, what is it that you can't say in front of me? You're hiding something. What are the two of you doing?"
Kelly ignored her mother. She pulled Mark to the corridor outside the door and said,
"Mark, I called you so many times. Why didn't you answer?"
Ever since he saved Kelly earlier, his sister-in-law's attitude toward him had changed a lot, but he wasn't used to it. Kelly bit her lip and said,
"I'm talking about serious business with you. Something happened at our school again."
Mark was stunned. Something happened at your school again? What?
Earlier tonight, a woman's stomach suddenly got bigger and bigger. In the end, she complained about the pain in her stomach and gave birth to something. It was that black fish,
Kelly reported. Mark was shocked. The fish from the Fire Voodoo cult? He asked. You mean the people of the Fire Voodoo cult appeared again? Another woman got pregnant and gave birth to a black fish? Kelly nodded.
Yes, just like what happened to me before. But this woman's stomach became very big in a short period of time. Then she gave birth to the black fish, and then she turned into a dried corpse, and the black fish disappeared.
Mark couldn't help but clench his fists. When his sister-in-law got hit by the fish venom, according to Master Zachariah, it was done by someone from the Fire Voodoo cult. Mark had resolved that matter and had expected some kind of retaliation, but he didn't expect it to happen so fast. The people from the Fire Voodoo cult had actually given another fish venom to another woman from the LA University, and they'd done it much faster than he'd expected. From what Kelly said, it seemed like the woman had given birth to the black fish in a short period of time, then turned into a dried corpse, and the fish was taken away by the person who planted the venom. It seemed like the people of the Fire Voodoo cult were determined to stir up trouble at LA University. They wanted to use the essences and bodies of the students to nurture a formidable fish venom king, and they didn't care who or how many they killed in the process. Last time, he'd saved both his sister-in-law and Tamsin Lamb, but he hadn't completely resolved the matter.
This woman died in a bizarre way, and she became a dried corpse very fast. She was so scared. Now someone has called the police. The patrol officers are there, and they have even set up a special task force to investigate,
Kelly said. Then why did you call me? Mark said.
Because only you can solve this problem, Kelly said. Those patrolmen came to our school to investigate and said that the woman had a strange illness that caused the various organs in her body to deteriorate, and then the blood and muscles to instantly evaporate. According to them, that's why she became a dried corpse. But that's simply nonsense. It was clear that someone placed fish venom within that woman, but the officers didn't believe it. President Winchester also told them that it was because someone planted venom in this woman, but the officers wouldn't believe him either.
They scolded President Winchester, saying that he was an educator and should know better. They actually said that his belief in these things was a bad influence on the university. Anyway, it was quite unpleasant.
Kelly paused for breath and looked at Mark pleadingly.
Mark, President Winchester asked me to come find you. He said that only you can solve this problem.
Mark said, The police have already intervened. If I interfere, I'm afraid they won't like it.
That's why President Winchester asked me to invite you, because the police intervened. Their methods of finding the murderer won't work. They're just a waste of time. That was why President Winchester asked me to ask you to find out who the mastermind was. Only then can this matter be resolved.
Mark hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll do what I can. Because of the urgency of the situation, Mark immediately followed her to LA University. Although it was close to midnight when they arrived, they found that there were several police cars parked at the university entrance, and a female dormitory building had already been cordoned off. The woman in question had given birth to that black fish and turned into a dried corpse in the dormitory. The officers wanted to find clues there, so they put up a cordon and didn't allow anyone to approach. Mark and Kelly saw a few people in uniform in front of the dormitory building. They were busy doing whatever police do at a crime scene. President Winchester spotted Mark and Kelly and rushed over in a hurry. President Winchester immediately grabbed one of Mark's hands. Master Mark, you finally came. Someone died in our school again. I believe she might have been hit by some fish venom. I told the officers, but they won't believe me. They even scolded me for spreading rumors. But it's good that you're here. You'll definitely be able to resolve this matter quickly. President Winchester had just finished speaking when a devastating scream suddenly came from the back garden of the school.
No, she's dead.
Mark, President Winchester, and the others were stunned when they heard the scream. The few officers who were busy in front of the dormitory building were also stunned. They ran toward the back garden. Mark, President Winchester, and Kelly also ran over there in a hurry. When they arrived at the back garden, they were all shocked because another woman had died and turned into a dried corpse. Besides the dried corpse stood a female student. She was the one who had shouted just now. What's going on? A tall officer with a righteous expression asked. The woman was scared silly. She looked at the body on the ground and stammered,
Inga is dead. She became a dried corpse.
The woman stammered as she told the story. The victim's name was Inga Clark, and the woman's name was Jackie McSweeney. They were in the same dormitory and were good friends. Jackie McSweeney said that Inga Clark's stomach suddenly started to enlarge that morning. By noon, it had already become very big. Inga was very afraid because yesterday, a woman at their school also gave birth to a fish after her stomach became bigger. Then she became a dried corpse and died. So that night, Inga begged Jackie to come to the backyard with her because Inga's stomach had already swollen up. She didn't dare to stay in the dormitory because she was afraid of being laughed at by others. Thus, Jackie accompanied Inga to the back garden. But not long after, Inga complained that her stomach hurt, and then she felt as if she was giving birth. After the fish came out of Inga's body, in an instant, it disappeared, and Inga turned into a dried corpse while Jackie watched in horror. After listening to Jackie's story, President Winchester broke out in a cold sweat. In just 2 days, 2 women had died. They were both infected by the fish venom. In just 2 days, 2 women from the university have died. How can this be? President Winchester turned to Mark and said, Master Mark, you have to save our students. Nonsense. The tall officer walked over and said sternly to President Winchester, President Winchester, you're the president of LA University and an educator. Why are you spreading these crazy rumors? What are you talking about? President Winchester said,
Captain Jones, whether you believe it or not, I've seen it with my own eyes. Some women were hit by the fish venom, and their stomachs slowly became bigger. If it wasn't for Master Mark saving them, those women too would have died. So I know that these 2 women who turned into dried corpses were also hit by the fish venom. If you don't believe me, ask Master Mark.
Captain Jones turned to look at Mark with contempt. Master Mark? Only those who have made great achievements in a certain field are worthy of being called masters. How can you call yourself a master at such a young age? What exactly are you a master in? Kelly couldn't continue listening. This officer was obviously looking down on Mark.
What are you talking about? Don't look down on Mark,
Kelly said. Captain Jones smiled disdainfully. Did I say something wrong? Nowadays, everyone calls themselves masters. Even those who collect garbage call themselves masters.
You?
Kelly was angry. She wanted to say something, but Mark gave her a look, indicating that she should not speak. President Winchester saw that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so he quickly went forward and said,
Captain Jones, don't look at how young Mr. Johnson is. He's really capable. He really is a master.
Captain Jones glanced at Mark and said in a solemn voice, Okay then, I would like to hear what your master thinks. Master Mark, what do you think about this case? Mark frowned. He'd thought earlier that if the police were involved, it would be inconvenient for him to stay out and to avoid giving himself more trouble. And it looked like he was right. Mark didn't stand on ceremony, but said straightforwardly, I don't know about solving the case, but regarding this matter, indeed we can't follow the normal procedures because the reason why this woman turned into a dried corpse was not because she was killed on purpose. Instead, she was poisoned with a rare fish venom. In other words, there was no so-called murderer at all. This woman was merely targeted as a host by the person who planted the venom. So you don't have to expend a lot of effort to solve this case, because you can't catch the person who planted the venom at all. To be exact, there's no murderer for you to catch. Hearing this, Captain Jones's expression immediately changed. Bold words, Jones said coldly. He hadn't thought that this young man who called himself a master would be so arrogant and conceited as to claim that the police couldn't catch the murderer. What a joke! When Jones joined the force, he'd solved a big case after just a few years. He'd gained many honors and had been promoted to captain at a young age. Most people thought he had a bright future ahead of him, and he was extremely confident in himself. He even declared that there was no case in California that Captain Brian Jones couldn't solve. As a cop, Jones had always paid attention to solving cases with science. He didn't believe in any superstitious theories at all. What curse? What venom? What supernatural event? That is all nonsense. In Jones's world, science was the only true way to solve crimes. So when Jones heard Mark say that this dead woman was hit by some fish venom, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. I thought you called yourself a master because you had at least some skills. I didn't think you would just spout a bunch of nonsense. Enough. We will find out the truth about this woman's death. There's nothing else for you here. You can leave now. Captain Jones ordered Mark to leave. At this time, a short-haired female officer walked over and said to Jones, Captain, after the preliminary medical examination, the death of this woman named Inga Clark is indeed very strange. It doesn't seem like she was killed because her belly became very big before she died. Moreover, she gave birth to a fish like she gave birth to a child. After that, she became a dried corpse. Captain, this matter isn't simple. It can't be solved by normal methods. Could it be some supernatural event? Or is there some evil technique involved? Before the cop could finish speaking, Jones interrupted her. Officer Worth, don't forget that you're a police officer. How can you open your mouth and say that something like a supernatural event happened? Evil magic does not exist. Officer Worth suddenly felt wronged and couldn't help but say, But there are many things in this world that cannot be explained by science. For example, some people see ghosts. There are also some unsolved cases that might be related to supernatural events. Enough! Captain Jones interrupted Officer Worth's words once again. I don't believe this. Someone must have used some special method to make Inga Clark give birth to a fish and then become a dried corpse. Then Captain Jones waved his hand and ordered, "Let's go and survey the scene again. There might be new discoveries." Mark sneered and said, "Captain Jones, don't waste your time. You won't be able to find out who planted the venom even after 100 years, and you don't have that much time." Mark looked up and found that the sky above the school was covered with dark clouds and filled with evil energy. He said again, "Captain Jones, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. If you can't find the mastermind within 3 hours, there will be more women dying in this school. The person who planted the venom obviously wants to use the young bodies of the women in the university. To raise a peerless fish venom king, he planted the corpse fish in my sister-in-law's stomach. But I saw through it and got it out of her. Then it was planted in Tamsin's stomach. I also killed that fish. But it seems that the person who planted the venom won't quit. He chose another woman as his target to raise the venom. Furthermore, the gestation speed has increased, which is why this woman called Inga Clark died in such a short period of time. Because the time was so short, whoever is doing this had to choose at least 5 women as consecutive hosts. The woman from the dormitory building was first. This Inga Clark was second, and there will be a third, then a fourth, and a fifth." Officer Worth was stunned when she heard this. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Is it that serious? Will there be more people dying in 3 hours? Besides the woman in the dormitory and Inga Clark, there will be 3 more deaths before this stops?" Officer Worth turned her gaze to Jones. "Captain, it seems that we really do not have much time left. 3 hours. We need to solve this case and catch the murderer within 3 hours. That's too short a time." Captain Jones narrowed his eyes and looked straight at Mark. "What makes you think that someone will die after 3 hours? And 3 more people will die? How do you know the number? Do you have any proof?" "Intuition," Mark said softly. Captain Jones laughed in disdain. "Ridiculous. Police pay attention to evidence, not intuition when solving cases." Jones waved his hand impatiently. "All right, we'll start work now. Anyone not connected to the force needs to leave. Now! Don't interfere with our work." Mark was a little angry. This Captain Jones was too confident. Mark didn't want to care about this matter at first, but because it concerned the lives of many people, he really couldn't bring himself to ignore it. After thinking for a while, he said to Captain Jones, "Captain, I think I need to remind you that this concerns the lives of people. If you persist in following procedure and only using your scientific methods to solve the case, you will only waste time. The mastermind behind this must be caught within the next 3 hours. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Are you capable of solving this case in 3 hours? No, you're not." Mark raised his right index finger and shook it, directly denying Jones and the other police. "Only I can discover the mastermind behind this matter in such a short period of time. You certainly can't." Captain Jones burst into laughter. His face was filled with disdain. "Just you? Who do you think you are? How dare you talk big in front of me and my team? I'm now ordering you to leave. Otherwise, I'll arrest you for obstructing official business." Mark shook his head and said, "All right, I'll leave. But don't blame me if more women are dead soon. In 3 hours, it will be too late. Captain Jones, I'm afraid that you will be blamed for the consequences." Mark shook his head at Jones before giving Kelly a look. "Kelly, time to go." Mark waved his hand and left, with Kelly following him. Captain Jones was too arrogant. If Mark didn't teach him a lesson, Jones wouldn't know what a master was. In about 3 hours, Captain Jones would definitely be begging Mark for help. Kelly asked, "Mark, are you leaving just like that?" Mark said, "What else can we do if we don't leave? Jones already gave the order for visitors to clear out." "But the cops can't resolve this matter. That's the fish venom. Only you can deal with it." Kelly looked worried. Mark said, "Don't worry. In 3 hours at most, they'll definitely come and beg me for help. By that time, they'll have figured out that only I can solve this problem. They certainly won't be able to." Mark stopped walking and added, "All right, you don't need to come with me. It's late. Go and rest." "Then you aren't going home?" Kelly asked. Mark shook his head. "No point. I'll only have to turn around and come back here in 3 hours." "Then I'm not leaving either. I'm a little hungry, though. Why don't we find a place to eat supper?" Kelly suggested. Mark looked at her sadly. Kelly was confused by Mark's look. She blinked and asked,
"What is it? Why are you looking at me like that?"
"You want to eat supper with me?" Mark shook his head. "If I remember correctly, you have always hated me. You call me a loser more than anyone else. You never speak to me nicely. You've always been sarcastic, and sometimes you even want to fight for justice for your sister. Now you want to eat supper with me? Your attitude changed very quickly. I'm really not used to it. Is your change of attitude just because I saved you when I helped you remove the fish venom?" Kelly coughed awkwardly after Mark said that. Then she raised her chin and said,
"I used to hate you because you were a useless person. You dragged my sister down and humiliated our whole family. To be honest, sometimes I also thought that I was being too mean to you. I tried to persuade myself to treat you better. After all, you are my brother-in-law. I tried to find good points in you, even if they were small, but I failed because I found that you really don't have any good points at all. You're ugly, cowardly, and have no ability. You don't look like a man at all. You're just a wimp. That's why my attitude towards you isn't good, but..." Kelly trailed off, and her small eyes rolled. Mark asked, "But what?" "But recently I found that you're a little different from before. Although I've always suspected that you do not know how to treat illnesses, I can't deny that it was you who cured my father. And Red Green, your temperament has changed, and the black spots on your face are gone. No matter what, you're different from before. You look more like a human now. This is quite surprising to me. Also, when I was hit by the fish venom and I thought I was going to die and my reputation would be ruined, only you believed in me. Everyone else thought the worst of me and that I was pregnant because I was fooling around with a man. Even my mother thought so. Only you didn't, and you even helped me remove the venom. I have to admit that you saved my life. Even if I, Kelly, have no conscience and treated you badly, I can't be mean to the man who saved me." Mark couldn't help but laugh. "So that's what happened," Kelly said seriously. "Don't laugh. Let me ask you something, and you have to answer me honestly. You've been part of our family for 5 years and have been ridiculed all that time, but there was no change at all. In fact, you were becoming more and more cowardly every day. But why do you seem to have changed into a different person all of a sudden? What exactly made you change yourself in such a short period of time? Also, how do you know how to remove the venom? How do you know how to chant? How did you suddenly become so powerful and such a good fighter? I heard that you crippled Jack. In the past, I wouldn't have believed it was possible." Kelly shook her head in disbelief before continuing. "By the way, how did the black spots on your face disappear all of a sudden? In the past, my sister bought quite a number of acne washes and creams in order to help you remove them. She spent quite a bit of money on them, but none of them had any effect." As Kelly spoke, she actually raised her hand to touch Mark's face because she was really curious. Mark quickly stepped back and said, "Hey, you're my sister-in-law. Don't touch me." Kelly snorted and said, "I was just curious. How did you have such a big change during this period of time?" Mark laughed. Of course, he wouldn't tell his sister-in-law that it was because 5 years had passed, and the old man from the Profound group had sealed all his power in Mark's body. But now that Mark could use all of his power, he'd become a different person. "What are you laughing at? Answer my question," Kelly demanded. "No reason." Mark's tone was indifferent. "When a person is pushed to the extreme, there will always be some changes. Nothing in this world stays the same. Humans are no different." Mark said a few profound but ambiguous words. Kelly pouted and said, "So you were forced to the extreme, and that is why you changed? What about in the past? In the past when we beat you up and scolded you, but we didn't treat you as a person? Wasn't that pushing you to the limit? Why didn't you change in the past? Why have you only changed now?" "Changes also need an opportunity. It's not like a person can change whenever they want." "All right, let's not talk about this anymore. There seems to be a big restaurant up ahead. Why don't we go there and eat?" Mark quickly walked forward and changed the topic at the same time. Mark and Kelly entered the restaurant near LA University and sat down at a table. Because it was very early in the morning, there weren't many people in the booths. There were a few tables of customers scattered around. Mark and Kelly had just sat down when they were stared at by a guest at the table beside them. This was a middle-aged man in his 30s. He was thin and somewhat handsome, but perhaps because he drank too much, his face was somewhat red. This middle-aged man stared unblinkingly at Kelly and Mark, and his eyes narrowed. If Kelly had seen this person at this moment, she would definitely have recognized that he was none other than Hubert Lindstrom, but she didn't see him because she was looking at her menu.
Mark didn't notice either, because he was also trying to decide what to order. Hubert had invited a group of his friends to the restaurant for drinks. They'd worked their way through 3 rounds when he saw Mark and Kelly come in. Seeing Hubert looking at the woman at the next table, the fat man sitting next to Hubert said with a mouthful of alcohol, "What's wrong, bro? What are you looking at?" The fat man followed Hubert's gaze to Kelly. His face immediately revealed a sleazy smile. "Oh, she's hot. No wonder you're looking like a lonesome puppy." Fatty chuckled as he leaned in close beside Hubert's ear and muttered, "What's the matter? Are you interested in the woman at the next table?" Hubert waved his hand and said, "I know her. I've been interested in her for a long time. She's a student at LA University. When Hank's girlfriend Lisa celebrated her birthday, we had dinner together. We even went to Pacific Coast Karaoke to sing together. I almost got my hands on her then. I would have, except for some guy who came in and messed everything up," Hubert said indignantly. Recalling what happened in the Pacific Coast Karaoke, Hubert was furious. That time, with Hank's help, he had almost gotten his hands on Kelly. But then they had unintentionally offended Julius, and both Hubert and Hank nearly had one of their hands cut off. Unfortunately, after that, Hubert's plan was messed up by Kelly's useless brother-in-law, Mark. He'd been brooding over the altercation ever since. Fatty said, "Who has the guts to snatch a woman from you, Hubert? Who would dare to mess with you?" Hubert pointed at Mark, who was sitting beside Kelly, and said, "That's the guy." The fat man and the others immediately became angry when they heard that. "Bro, since you've taken a fancy to that woman, go ahead and take her. Today, we have enough people here to support you. I want to see if this guy will dare to mess with you again." Fatty stood up as he spoke. There were more than 10 of Hubert's buddies there altogether, and they all stood up as well. Fatty said, "Hubert, these guys will go and deal with that guy first. When he's out of action, you can have the woman and do whatever you like with her." After saying that, the fat man nodded at his friends, and they all headed toward Mark's table. Hubert gave the fat man a look and said, "Patrick, forget it. That Mark guy is very good at fighting. Even Julius is no match for him." Patrick said, "So what if he can fight? There's more of us than of him. Why should we be afraid?" After saying that, Patrick and the others ignored Hubert's warnings and walked toward Mark and Kelly while holding a bottle of wine and cursing. Hubert was helpless and could only stand up and walk with them. At this time, Mark and Kelly had already ordered. Just as they put down their menus, they looked up and saw a drunk fat guy leading a group of people toward their table. Patrick walked over and slammed the bottle in his hand onto the table in front of Mark. He burped and pointed at Mark and scolded, "You loser, on your feet." Mark didn't move. He picked up his cup, took a sip of coffee, and glanced at the fat man and his friends. "Hey, did you not hear what I said? I told you to get up. After that, kneel on the ground and call me sir 3 times. Kelly frowned and then said, "What do you want?" Patrick and the others turned their eyes to Kelly and smiled vulgarly. "What do we want? What do we not want? But right now, we want you for our bro here. Hubert wants you to be his woman, and I'm sure you know what that means." The group of people behind Patrick burst into lewd laughter.